Good day everybody, this is Pillar from Tales Productions and welcome back to Star Trek Online. This is a free-to-play account playing through the story of a 23rd century Starfleet officer. And in today's episode we're doing a review. We've just finished the Iconian War. That means the last episode was Midnight, which is beautiful. But we're going to get onto that in a second. This is the review then. So as usual, this isn't the first one you've probably seen. So it will be a very short episode. They normally last around 10 minutes, depending on whether I have any housekeeping to do at the end, things like that. But around 10 minutes normally. And I'm doing this one slightly differently, actually. I do want to mention it's very slightly different. So normally I do it straight after completing the final episode. So I have been trying in the past to do them straight away. As soon as I finish the final episode of the series, within a couple of minutes, I'll just get straight back to Earth Space Dock and do the review. I haven't done that this time, so I've purposefully decided that I want to give it a couple of days, allow me to think it through, make sure I'm getting all of my points down. I'm not sure if this is a better way of doing it, because I think the sort of instant emotional reaction is a good thing, but we will soon see, actually. Let's see if it helps out. Probably not. So, I completed the Iconian War. If you've been watching any of this storyline, any of this series, you probably know that every time Iconians were mentioned, I got super fangirl excited. I have always thought that the Iconians were probably the best, the least explored, and the best storyline from the entire Star Trek franchise. So by that, I mean they were always, every time they were mentioned, I think it was 3 definite individual episodes that they were fully mentioned in, I just think that they were explored so little, it left it so open to your own imagination, and the whole idea of like a super race, not super as in super powered, but you know, super race as in they controlled so much of space. They were extremely strong technologically from what we knew. They were way ahead of everybody else, and they controlled all of the minor races under them. And then all the minor races overthrew them. So the storyline that we had was, or all we knew from the series, was that they were quite... would domineering be the right word? They weren't exactly nice overlords to their people. That was the story from the series that we watched anyway. They were generally thought of as evil, and their Iconian gateways, I think from the story actually, they thought it meant they didn't have much of a fleet. All of their traversing of space was done through the gateways, but I mean that seems to have been overwritten for this anyway, but it doesn't matter. So the Iconian storyline I always thought was the best unexplored storyline in Star Trek. I think that's quite a vague but true comment. So how do I feel it transferred over to Star Trek Online? I think they've mentioned... So one thing that they've done with Iconian War and with Future Proof that we're about to start is a lot of build-up throughout all the other seasons, I guess, is what they are. They tend to mention the Iconians, or they obviously the Future Proof has yesterday's war that's been going on throughout the whole thing, but all the way through the storyline. So I think it started with Romulan Mystery. I think the Iconians were mentioned here. Yeah, they were, weren't they? Because it was the Iconians that were sort of controlling Hakiv, and there was an Iconian gateway on that world. Yeah, so as early on as that, and then since then they've just had like fairly regular mentions, so building up the anticipation, and the whole storyline sort of seems to be arcing towards one thing, and that has been done exceptionally well. I have in the past probably been a little bit critical of Star Trek Online's writers, but I think my only criticisms have always come from sort of very specific sentences that don't fit in, which isn't the writer's fault probably, it's more like the programming. Something has changed in it and they've forgotten to get rid of a line or something like that. So I feel like I've criticised a few things, but they've always been very specific minor things, whereas the overall storyline, whoever the sort of grand designer is of this, has done so well. So well, especially with regards to the Iconian War. I think the Delta Quadrant falls into that as well. How sort of the overall storyline, the overall narrative has just been incredible. So the first thing about the Iconian War, the storyline, is a massive positive. And that comes from partly the huge scope that they've had to play with. The Iconian War literally spans over all of the quadrants, because the Iconians had influence everywhere when they were around. Obviously, we only see it in the Beta Quadrant and the Delta Quadrant, really, but they were everywhere. Oh, and the Alpha Quadrant, actually, because the preservers. Another massive thing. So in a previous series, I've commented on how Star Trek Online liked doing the massive scope things, but they sometimes shied away from massive changes. I say the word massive too much. Big changes. But then the Preserver storyline changed all that, and they tended to, or they seemed to allow these big shifts in the dynamic. And the Iconian War is definitely part of that. So the Preservers obviously come back into it, and unfortunately get destroyed, which is huge. That's massive again. So I love that. I love whoever sort of produces, let's say, the narrative for all these things. I think it's done incredibly well. They need a pat on the back, and well done to them. So the scope of it all, the design leading up to it, building up the suspension, and then the storylines themselves. So I think this is my favourite length of a season. So 8 episodes. So I was a little bit critical of the Borg Advance because it was so short. 5, and I think one of them was an introduction. I think the Breen Invasion is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well, and one introduction. So yeah, those two, far too short, I'd say. It definitely got some criticism for me. But then things like the Klingon War, far too long. Maybe sort of 8 to 10 is my sweet spot, I'd say. And especially because there isn't a single filler episode or introduction episode. Every single one of these was just incredible. Fully action-packed all the way through. Loved it. Iconian War is the right length, keeping you entertained and interested all the way through, and every single episode had something interesting happening in it, something big. So yeah, definite benefit there as well, definite positive. All storyline things, I think, for the Iconian War flesh out really well. There you go. Just top of the list at the moment. Now, I'm going to obviously say at the end, which I don't think will be any surprise to any of you, whether it's become my favourite or not. Look forward to that. So, a couple of things that I do want to compare between this one and the other ones. So, the Delta Quadrant storyline, I specifically mentioned that the new mechanics that were introduced, new puzzles, especially more dexterity-based puzzles rather than logic-based puzzles, they were very welcome. Unfortunately, I haven't really noticed any of that in the Iconian War. There haven't been any sort of jumping puzzles. I mean, that's probably not the best example, but that's something they introduced in the Delta Quadrant storyline. There haven't really been any more different types of puzzles. A very minor problem, considering all the way throughout it I barely thought of that. I've only thought about it because I've had time to consider the review. But going through it, I didn't think, oh, this needs a puzzle. But still, possibly something that it's lacking. It might be good to put that in there. So mechanics-wise, there hasn't really been anything new added, which might be a good thing to add in later. I don't know. So the only other two things that I want to mention, the polish, which I seem to mention in every single one. The polish is actually much better, but it's really unfortunate. The kind of minor bugs that happen are really frustrating, I think. Slightly annoying. Like, the main ones were on, I just want to make sure I get the right time in a bottle. So that's the one where you first really meet the Krenim and start talking to them about how their sort of time manipulation works. On there, I had two fairly massive bugs. So the first one, that everything went dark and I couldn't really see much. I had to go into the settings, change some graphic settings. That shouldn't be a requirement. And the second one, the big reveal of the planet that was sort of not cloaked, but, you know, in a time bottle, essentially. I didn't see it reveal. It sort of panned up as if I should have been seeing it, but then nothing revealed. So two frustratingly annoying bugs, which kind of ruined that episode, as far as my viewers, I think, were concerned anyway. They all seemed a bit frustrated by that. And unfortunately, I mean, I wish I could have seen it. I haven't even looked at anybody else's videos on YouTube to see what it should have looked like. I might even replay it and just see if it happens again. That'd be fun. But yeah, so the very few bugs that existed, unfortunately, were more annoying. So there are still bugs. They are still bad. And something that seems to have become more prevalent with the Delta Quadrant and the Iconian War, again, it does seem to be only me, but I've done a few tests now and it still happens. So regular disconnects, especially on loading, when we're loading into a new map, normally within a mission, although I have been disconnected a few times in sector space. So very regular, like minimum of 2 times every night that I'm streaming, basically, which is around sort of two every 4 hours, let's say, maybe 3. So I think that's also a bad thing, but how much of that is on Star Trek Online side is obviously up in the air, no way for me to know. So the polished stuff. The only other thing that I want to discuss quickly, very quickly, is the difficulty. So I've been discussing with a lot with the Twitch and YouTube community about the build that I've got, how much easier it's become since I've changed the build. I obviously put a lot of praise into the tier 6 ship that I got as part of the summer event. I've been told though, I think it was Galen Dougal on Twitch, might have been Crystal, I always get you two mixed up, but the traits that I've got, so the extra ship trait, and now that I've got a few space traits on bridge officers and the new bridge officers that I've got, and improving my build in general with a few sets that we've been able to grind and collect, I've been told all of those things adding together give the benefit. It's not just that you've got a tier 6 ship. So the reason that I've become so much stronger in space, which was where I really struggled, is because of all these things together, and because I'm trying to improve things as I go. I have noticed in the Iconian War I've had absolutely no trouble at all. Either in ground or in space, both have been fairly easy. Now that doesn't mean I haven't died at all. In ground missions I have. And I think that's where the difficulty frustration comes from. So I would love to see a difficulty of a game based on the complexity and the mechanical difficulty, rather than just the amount of damage that an ability does goes up. So that's sort of false difficulty, I find. If the same abilities all doing the same things and all the same mechanics, and they just do a little bit more damage, then you're not sort of learning anything new. You can't be more skillful against it. It's just literally that getting hit by something will kill you. And unfortunately in this game, the sort of dodging mechanics aren't great. There's always a bit of lag there. So I would prefer to see much more mechanical difficulty coming from the fights, which we did see towards the end of the Iconian War. For instance, the fight with the Iconian, which was in the second to last episode, I think. So, Butterfly? No. Broken Circle. Yeah. I think Broken Circle. So, in an incredible fight, and sort of a 3 or 4 phased fight, where you push her back and then push him back? I think it was a he. I don't know. You push them back anyway, and then you have to sort of progress forward to the next part, and then you fight them again and push them back. And the mechanics were exactly the same as fighting one of the heralds, but still, it was interesting the way it worked. So definitely liked that. Definitely liked it. But generally, I think increasing damage to increase difficulty isn't the way to go. You should be increasing the mechanical difficulty of a fight instead, which hopefully is something that will present in the future. There you go. I honestly think that's all I've got to say. Now, just as a quick reveal, I have done a little bit of farming since our last video. So I now have the 3-piece set of... Is it this one? Yeah. There you go, that one. So the Krenim Temporal Manipulation set. There you go, got all 3 pieces. So I have that full thing now. And that goes along with the 3-piece Kabali set as well. So there you go. That's fun. I think I can use both of those together the whole time. It does mean I've got a 360-degree weapon. I put it in a rear slot, just replacing a Mark 13 blue. Now it does mean it does less damage. Slightly less damage. Oh. Actually, that says it does more damage. Wait a second. Oh no. Yeah, it is less. Okay, so that's 242.5 DPS. That's 336.2. So slightly less damage, but... I'm still told it's the way to go, so I'm going to stick with it, and then we'll see how that goes. Also, my mastery, just through playing the Iconian War, I haven't done any particular grinding for this. I'm already mastery rank 5, and working my way up to, 4, working my way up to 5. So that's brilliant. That progresses really well. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Okay, so there you go. That is the review of the Iconian War. You guys aren't going to be surprised at all when I tell you it is my favourite. Of all of the storylines, the Iconian War is the one that and to be fair, every single time that I've changed my favourite to the most recent one that seems to be played, I have sort of thought that the Iconian War is just going to win it hands down anyway. So the build-up and anticipation has been good. It's now my favourite. Let's see if the next one takes it off. We will see. Cool, but that's it. That is all. The Iconian War review, all done. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching. Join me in the next episodes for Future Proof, which we'll be moving on to. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are enjoying, and really, really hope you do enjoy. But by far the most important thing is just keep looking forward to all of these episodes of Star Trek Online.